This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. Welcome to the show.
This is American Real TV,
There's so much to talk to you about.
where everyone
You are a true inspiration.
has
We're all trying to do our part to change the world.
a story.
What's your mission? What do you want your legacy to be? You have such a great story. I cannot wait to share it. Welcome to the American Real family. I cannot wait to air this episode.
And now, here's your host, Roger Brooks.
This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is David Vass, the best-selling author of Liar Alleged, a tell-all, celebrities, sex, and all the rest. This is David's second time back on our show. We are so grateful to have him. David, welcome back. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I feel like I'm revisiting a family of friends because over the course of the last year, since my number one bestseller, thanks to you, has been published, I come to you from time to time with a question, and I never have to wait more than a few hours to get an answer. And I really do feel like we're a family and not just a business arrangement. So I thank you for that. And it's good to see you again.
Likewise. And no, it's funny because when we talk to a lot of our prospects who are looking for a publisher, one of the things that we tell them is that, you know, the process is very intimate, as you know, but it's really important for there to be a connection between the publisher and the author, that it goes beyond the transaction, and it has to be a good fit, because if it's not a good fit to start, you don't have that, you know, common ground of you know, this working toward the same goals, then, you know, it's probably not a good idea to get into a relationship. But we do, you know, we try to go above and beyond, because look, I mean, at the end of the day, the publishing industry, it's a challenge. I mean, there are a lot of good publishers out there, but there's many subpar publishers out there. So we do whatever we can to stand out, and I think that all starts with being accessible, you know, being willing to communicate, being willing to take our clients, you know, views and ideas and incorporate them into whatever we're doing. So I appreciate that, and yes, it is a true partnership that we have developed with you and many others of our clients.
Well, I feel as though that I'm standing up in front of the classroom saying, and this is what I learned in the last year, because somebody needs to tell first-time authors what not to do. Because I spent over $80,000 thinking that the only way to publish my book was to go through a literary agent. So I hired a company that said a traditional publishing route is the best route for me.
Mhm.
Well, $80,000 later, and a whole bunch of work that I needed to do to find agents and sending out something called query packets, which is very time consuming and has to be bespoke to each agent. Guess what? I got 4 responses, 2 of them thanks, but no thanks. One of them, I have 2 people who write like you, so I don't need a third. And the 4th saying, I'm just not a good fit. So, okay, I could accept all of that. I don't know where the other 75 went. But the point is, I would never go down that road again, because I think that traditional publishing is broken. I'm a member of the Authors Guild, and I was able to get some stats. And the long story short is, for every 1,000 query package that a literary agent gets, they take 1 client. So your odds are 1 in 1,000 if you don't self-produce your own book. You're hoping that you're that 1 person in 1,000. Then they in turn have to take it to their sources at the publishing company and auction it or get it. So of every 500 books that a publishing company sees, traditional publishing company, they choose 24. Well, you add all that up together, and that's why I came to you.
Yeah.
And
No,
again,
look, and
3 months later, my book was published.
yeah, no, that's great. I think the great thing about what we're doing today, it's a good opportunity for someone like you who has been through the process now. You're a year in, and you know, we have some data to share. There's things that we could go over, you know. But one of the things that I learned, and the reason I got into the industry, the reason I got into publishing, is because one of my author friends, who I've been following for a long time, His name is Jeffrey Gitomer. As a matter of fact, I have a bunch of his books here on my shelf. I'll show you one of them. This one's called Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Platinum Book of Cha-Ching. He's a sales guru, okay? He has sold millions of books over the course of his career. And he pulled me aside about 7 years ago. And he said, Roger, I know you're a writer as well. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm going to self-publishing because even as popular as I am,
Yeah.
it's him telling me, um, I, I could earn more revenue. I have far more control. And, and quite frankly, the process is a lot more fun doing it yourself. So with the right partners, right? So uh, that really got me to thinking that, okay, there's something to this. If this guy sold millions of books and he's moving to this model, I better listen. So that's how it all started for me about 7 years ago.
Well, you got really good advice from him because the traditional market is broken unless you're Oprah Winfrey or Prince Harry or infamous in some way.
Yeah.
The door is just closed, and even literary agents are finding other means of work because they can't sell their clients anymore. It's really broken.
Yeah.
And how it gets fixed, in my opinion, because it's the 21st century and we have new technology now. You don't need a printing press anymore. You need A&R press. You need somebody trustworthy like you, and you can publish your own book. And using your strategy techniques, you can become a #1 Amazon bestseller. And I got to tell you, this is so important to anybody who's thinking about using you and or writing a book and not knowing what to do. That #1 Amazon bestseller title on the top of my book opened more doors for me than anything else I've done in the past year. And I've been aggressive in visibility and marketing.
And
The,
why do you think that is? What can you give us a couple examples?
well, speaking for my generation, when I was growing up and heard that a book was on the bestseller list, I thought it must be a great book. So I wanted to read it. And if you're a #1 bestseller, I really wanted to read it.
Yeah.
And I was a #1 bestseller. And
Yeah.
so it clicked in my head. There were people who were that just, on Amazon, 10,000 new books a week are published. So if you don't have a hook, an edge over those other 9,999 people, you're not going to be looked at. And
Right.
that's why not just being a #1 Amazon bestseller helps, but also the guy I worked with, the people who do your artwork, your cover artwork, are critical because the Authors Guild says that on average, a person looks between 3 and 5 seconds at a title, at the cover of a book, which is usually twice the size of a postage stamp online, and they either click on it or they pass. And so you've got 3 to 5 seconds to sell a click based on what the cover of your book looks like. That didn't used to be so because you would go to Barnes and Noble and read the back of the book.
Right.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Today it's a lot more competitive.
It is. And then the formatting that is required to self-publish your book, to me, was extremely complicated. And I saw friends that tried to do it yourself, and their typeface was so small I couldn't read it, or there was more white space on each page than there was, or the font was wrong, or it just didn't look like a real book.
Right.
And my book looks fabulous. People compliment me on how good it looks. And that was because the person who does your formatting, she's really an expert at what she does. Everybody that I've dealt with that is part of the A&R family, they know what they're doing. And I get spammed, Roger. 10 times a day, I get things from other people who think they're you, who say, I can do this for you. I can do that for you. A, I've already done that the right way through you. And B, because I'm a year into this game and know it, I see what they're not telling me. And what they're not telling me is what you told me the very first time around. You told me how it works. They're not telling me how it works. They're trying to sell me a product. And it's a partnership. It's not a product.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And I remember, David, our very first conversation. And look, in a good way, you're a tough cookie. You do your homework. You came to us with, I think, probably 20 questions the first day. And it's important to me, again, before you get into relationship with someone, that to make sure that all of your questions are answered. So looking back, I'd love to know from you. And by the way, just so everyone knows, this is not a scripted conversation. We have not talked about things like this, right? So I'm just curious, looking back, how hard was it for you to make the decision? And then once you made the decision, now looking back, is it what you thought? Is it more than what you thought? Is it better? Is it worse? How was the experience overall?
Um, I'm going to play connect the dots. I tried to do my book traditionally. I looked at my checkbook and I was down $80,000 and had gone nowhere. And I thought, okay, I'm going to publish myself. Then I went online and I started looking at people that had good reputations. And AR Press and your name kept popping up repeatedly. And most of the things that popped up repeatedly were from the Better Business Bureau saying, don't use this person, don't use that person, but not you. So I picked up the phone and I called you. And I did have questions, and they were all answered to my satisfaction. And I felt like you were the real thing. And, I'm 74 years old, and before I retired and wrote my book, I was pretty high up in the corporate world. I can pretty much tell the real thing from the fake thing. I wanted to make sure I didn't get involved in another fake thing and spend another 20 or $30,000 and not have forward movement. And you gave me forward movement. You gave me my book. Less than 3 months into our first phone conversation, I had a book in my hands, #1 Amazon bestseller, which gave me the ammunition to be able to go out and promote, promote, promote.
Yeah.
This is not all on you. This has to be on the person who writes the book too. Not everybody is a good promoter, but there are other books to buy. There are things to learn online to find out how to do it, or if you have the money to get somebody to help you do it. But you do have to promote. But a big part of that, 70% of books are sold online. So a big part of that is Amazon, which goes back to being a #1 bestseller because their Autobots look at your placement and you pop up that way. So everything you've done for me has given me a step up in terms of my ability to market my book.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful for that because if I didn't have those tools to work with, I would never have been able to get an interview with People magazine and be on PBS. And, I have 14 five-star reviews, and I can't mention, because it's embargoed, the name of the #1 literary magazine in the United States is going to name my book in their December edition one of the top 100 books of the year out of
Wow.
17,000 books they reviewed.
That's
Now,
awesome.
now
I
come,
did not know that. Congratulations. That's huge.
thank you. Well, none of that would have happened if I hadn't hooked up with you.
Yeah, and let's talk
It just,
about that a little more, that partnership, right? So, and this is what we try to talk to first-time authors about a lot is that yes, we can do all the foundational things. We'll get you a great book cover. We will make sure that it's, well formatted and the back cover is awesome and that we get you on the bestseller list and all that. But I think you're a prime example, David, of um, an author that is their own advocate. We talk about this when if when people get illness, right? If you get an illness, you can't just rely on one doctor's opinion. You have to become your own advocate and get out there and talk to many other people. It's very similar in that when you write a book, you have to become your own advocate. And you did that really, really well. So I'd love if you could share some of those tips with our audience about once you had your asset, once you had your book, how did you get it to People Magazine and RuPaul and all these different outlets that picked it up for you?
well, again, it starts with the foundation. So I was very lucky to run across AR Press and work with you and your team because what I had to sell and market to all of these other people was legitimate, professional, looked good, et cetera, et cetera. So I started by going to people like Kirkus Reviews and Midwest Book Reviews. I went online and looked who will review a book that's not the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal because they only review traditional published books. You never, as an
Right.
indie author, they're not going to mess with you. So I figured that part out. So I went after reviews that I could get, and I was very lucky that all my reviews were 5 stars or highly recommended or whatnot. So now I had quotes that I could use. So I found a press release company and I started sending out press releases about my books with little bits of 5 star reviewers saying it's really this, it's really that, it's controversial, it's interesting, it's a wild read, it's not for every. And people picked up on that.
Yeah.
Small newspapers. Well, a small newspaper that picks up on that, guess who reads a small newspaper? A small independent bookstore. So then I get a call from the bookstore and they're like, oh, I'm reading about this book. Um, you know, could you come in and maybe do a reading one night for us? And you throw the pebble in the lake and then the circles go out. It I felt like a politician in Iowa. I was selling my book one book at a time. And whenever I would get discouraged, and there were times when I was, because I was thinking I was going to sell thousands of books a week. It doesn't work that way. You have to build it. You
Yes.
know? One of the things that so this politician in Iowa, one book at a time thing, you have to have a little patience with it and you have to try and be clever with it. And joining the Authors Guild helped me tremendously because I stopped making mistakes. If I had a question, I had a whole forum of people saying, do it this way, do it that way. That was extremely helpful. But also recently, I'm trying to find the name of it. Oh, you guys call it your ebook blast.
Yes.
Recently, I was looking for another angle. I thought, well, I've tried the angle of the reviews and I've tried the angle of this and I've tried the angle of bookstores. Now, and podcasts. Now, what am I going to do next? And then I read this thing that you were doing called an ebook boost. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And as it turns out, I got in touch with you or one of your people. It actually wasn't you. And I said, I think I want to do this ebook boost because it says that you can sell 250 of my books within a few days' time. And if you do that, based on how I've been tracking my book on Amazon specifically, that's going to put me back in the top 10 bestsellers.
Right.
And I have a new press release. So let's do that. So we did. And you sold 250 books for me in 72 hours.
Yeah.
My press release went out 24 hours later.
That's awesome.
I've sold another 150 books probably as a result of that press release, which was based on your selling 250 books for me, which got my numbers back up again.
Yeah.
So, ups and downs of being an independent writer. You
Yeah.
got to put in the time, but I'm still being talked about nationally and regionally, and my book's a year old. And there are people who have gone to traditional publishers who are infamous or famous who can't say that.
Yeah.
So I it's all because of your foundation.
No, I appreciate it. Look, and I think the reality is, and we talk to many of our authors about this, and you referred to it. When you have a book, it's a long game. It's everyone gets excited about their own book, right? Especially when it first comes out. And like you said, you're thinking thousands of books are going to be sold, but it is really, really competitive out there. So, but if you're smart and you have a strategy and you do the foundational things that we talked about today, make sure it has a wonderful book cover, make sure it's well formatted, but it has to be a good book. At the end of the day, good books sell books because of word of mouth. People read it, they tell their friends, going back as long as books have been around. It's all through word of mouth. So, but if you're not doing anything and the book just sits on the shelf, then it's just going to sit there. So the fact that you've been very proactive in conjunction with the different promotions we worked on for you, I think that's, why you're feeling so good about your product. And it's, just wonderful to be able to share. I think the one question I had for you, David, and it's probably the hardest question in the room, and it's probably the one question that most first-time authors and prospects ask pretty quickly
Oh yeah,
is,
I hate to hear this. What is it?
yeah, people ask, am I going to receive a return on investment, right? Now, I think your case is a little unique. You spent a lot of money before you even met us, right? So, but that aside, you know, knowing that this is a long game and we don't make any promises, right? I never want to tell anyone, oh, yes, you're going to get a return on investment within the 3 months. No. But if you do things over time and continue to do it, it builds and builds and builds. So I'm just curious about your response when it comes to return on investment. Very candidly, if you could share that with our listeners and viewers.
Well, I'm always candid. One of the things that I mentioned in my book is overcoming so many of my addictions. And one of my addictions was lying. So I don't lie anymore. And I've sadly gone in the other direction where I'm so brutally honest now that a lot of people kind of wish I was a liar again.
We like that old
They
David.
don't like
Lie
what
to
I
me, lie to me.
say. Tell me I look good. So,
Right.
so if I had not spent $80,000 going down the traditional publishing route because I didn't know better, and if I had come to AR directly, I would have made my money back last month. Everything that I put into your company would have been returned to me over the course of 1 year. And I think that that's a good tale and a lucky tale. But one of the ways that I did that was a few months into being independently published. I realized that my book was primarily about celebrities, gossip, addictions, and the LGBTQ community. And I started using visibility and marketing campaigns primarily on social media and with influencers on social media for those specific subgenres because it's a great big world out there. And if I just put out that I have a book that's about 5 different things, a lot of people scratch their head and say, I don't want to read about 5 different things. So I determined what my markets were and I went after specific markets. And I did it one market at a time to see if my books were going up or going down or staying flat. So celebrities took it up, LGBTQ took it up, addictions kept it flat.
Hmm.
So it showed me where to go and who to talk to and how to organize my press and my visibility and what wasn't going to work for me. And I don't think anybody else could have done that for me. Um, but you see, my book has a narrative and gossip and controversial material. I'm currently banned in 3 states, by the way, which I think is I'm badge of honor. You can buy
You,
me wine.
you personally are banned or the book?
The book is banned in 3 states, but there's the big gay book bus that's going through those states, selling books illegally, hoping that a lawsuit will come up because our First Amendment rights, as you know, are under attack. And RuPaul's Allstora is working very hard. And you can buy my book online in any of those states. But here's the kicker. When your book gets banned in a state, the good part is you must have a really interesting book.
Right.
The not so good part is that libraries, universities, schools are prohibited from buying your book, which
Hmm.
can impact your sales, especially if you're nonfiction. But if you're nonfiction, you're probably not going to get banned. So, I used being banned in 3 states as a way to sell my book. So I put out a press release because putting out a press release, there are lots of companies. I think the best is called EIN And you
Yes.
can buy 10 press releases for like $300, and then you send out whatever you want. And if somebody in Omaha or San Francisco is having a soft news day, they might pick you up. It's like rolling the dice.
Sure.
It's rolling marketing dice, you know. So I put out a press release and said, why is this book banned in 3 states? Yay, I had something new to sell. It
Yeah.
wasn't the same old tired David, you should read my book because I work with Ella Fitzgerald and Johnny Mathis stuff. It was, why am I banned in 3 states? I'm sure, Roger, that next month something will come up
Yeah.
somewhere, somehow. Well, I know what it'll be. It'll be that I'm one of the top 100 books of the year.
That's
I'm,
right.
I'm already writing the press release. I'm
That's
ready.
awesome.
And that's what, as a new author, you have to do. You have to think ahead, be proactive, be ready, and put in the work. And I would like to add, I'm not trying to hog up my time now, but I'd like to add that what I'm seeing more and more when people are buying books online is bundling of books. People are buying 2 books or 3 books or 4 books and getting a discount. And guess what I've discovered? It doesn't cost any more to advertise 3 books than it does to advertise 1 book. So moving forward, if I had all this to do over again, I would have written Liar Alleged Part 2 as well
Mm,
and put it in as a bundle and
yes.
discounted one. And so I think that's a very good strategy. And it's one that I'm seeing more and more um, online. People are bundling their books and
Yes.
selling them at a discount that way. And you still make more money. Do you know that I average 70% of the cost or the price of my book comes back to me? 60 to 70%, actually, depending on if it's the audiobook or the Kindle or the
Right.
whatnot, unless I'm running a sale. Now, if I had gone down that traditional road that cost me 80 grand and got me nothing, and did get me an agent, 1 in 1,000, who did get me a book deal, 1 in 250, and it was popular, 1 in 23, I'd be making 17% of that book money would go to me.
Right.
17.
Yeah.
Publishing, self-publishing, 60 to 70% comes to me. That affords me money that's coming in to do advertising campaigns and marketing campaigns. If I were a traditionally published author, I would be so poor that if the publisher didn't promote my book, I wouldn't have the money to do it because I wouldn't be making any money on that book. It's another
Right.
good reason for going independent. You make enough money to promote yourself.
For sure, David. And what would you say? So first of all, I'd like to thank you for t telling us that it took about a year, right? That's the brutally honest truth that, and that's, I didn't know what that number was going to be or if you were even there yet, but to hear it's 12 months, that's great, and it gives people at least an idea of how much time it took you anyway. And everyone's different, We have we have some authors that like you, they're trying to find their different audiences. We have one gentleman who was a pilot in Vietnam, and what he does is he goes around different states and he talks to these different VA groups and he
Sure.
brings books with him and he's been selling so many books that way. So to me, it's all about finding those niche, areas that people will respond to your products. So, that's excellent that you told us that it took you 1 year, and it's just it's a good uh, foundation, for people to at least have some basis for to say, okay, if I invest in this, it may take me about a year to get my money back. But what
Well,
would you say to people
go ahead.
who are on the fence, right? Like they still feel that their book is the best book in the world and they shouldn't pay someone like AR Press to do their book, that we should be paying them. I mean, we have a hard time conveying that to people that look, that the industry has changed, right? If you want to get your book published quickly today in a very professional manner, you have to pay for that service. But you get 100% of the rights and royalties back to recoup your money. What would you say to those people?
Nobody's going to pay you for your book. Nobody. Whether you're going hybrid, you have to pay money. Whether you're going independent, you have to pay money. Whether you're going traditional, there goes 15% of your revenue to your literary agent right there. And if you don't have a literary agent and you send direct to Doubleday or a traditional publisher, it goes right in the garbage can. They don't have the money for readers anymore. That's from the 60s. It doesn't happen. You have to have some money to make an investment to create your foundation for what it is you're going to sell. You absolutely have to do that. It is an investment. If you can't find a way to invest in your book, then don't expect your book to be published. The industry, there are no free rides.
Yeah.
That's my experience. That
Yep.
really has been my experience. And I was published on September 18th. And as I said earlier, you know, the amount of money that I spent AR Press, I've made it all back now. If I hadn't made terrible mistakes before I found you, I would now be generating 100% profit for myself. And what I'm going after now is the narrative market, because aside from all my celebrity gossip stuff in Liar Alleged, my narrative is a really good one. And so now I'm going after Netflix and CBS and Amazon. And, there are so many of them now, these streaming networks, and they have their own agents and they pay for narrative rights. And that's a story for another time because some of them are legit and some of them just want you to put some money up front for them to represent you.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. You should
Be
never have
careful there. Yeah.
Never give an agent money. If you're hiring an agent, their job is to make you the money and then take their percentage.
Yeah.
If it works any other way, no, it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah,
But
we do have one client, can't tell the name yet because it's still not public, but she wrote a book about vampires and Netflix picked it up. So it is possible. What you're
absolutely.
talking about is possible. These houses are looking for great content. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm happy to hear that you're going down that road because it's like anything. If you don't try, you'll never know.
Well,
And
you have to expand and expand and
yes,
because your product is your product. So you have to, you go to the left, you wiggle to the left for a while, you wiggle to the right for a while, and uh, Iowa politicians selling it one at a time, hit the bookstores, hit reading groups. Reading groups are great, 15 people who get together once a month and read a book and talk about it.
yes.
To have an author come and talk to them about a book that they've read, especially if you take 10 or 12 of your books and say, here, I'll give you the book free. You guys discuss it. I'll come. Tell me if you think I did a good job or not. Well, then
Yeah.
they tell friends and their friends tell friends. I sell 50 books for giving away 10.
Yeah. Again, it's smart marketing. It's very smart. Uh, what a great conversation, David. I'm so happy we were able to do this. I know you talked about you're up for that award next month. What else are you working on? Anything more that you could share?
I'm working on part two. I'm about 60% finished. And it's much harder because almost everybody I talk about in part one is dead. So they can't come after me. But part two, they're very much alive and they could come after me. So I'm right at the point where I'm getting ready to put my house and my car and my spouse's name just in case. And I'll be ready, hopefully by year's end, you'll be getting a draft of my second book. And then when you do your magic and that happens, then I'll have two books and I'll start bundling. And
Yeah,
that's a whole different level of marketing and advertising. And I'm sure you built your business the same way. I'm sure that AR Press started with one idea and then it,
that's
it,
right.
it
Yeah,
birthed the second idea and it birthed the third idea. It's the same way if you're an author, and if you don't have enough money to make an investment, an initial investment to get a book in your hands, because otherwise you have nothing to sell. You've
right.
got to make that investment. It does not come from free from anybody. If you're not prepared to make that investment, enjoy reading your book over and over again because Nothing's going to happen.
It's
You
so
have to
true.
do it, you know?
Yeah,
I know
it's
people
true.
that have mortgaged their house to do it. I
Yeah.
know people that have, I know a guy, well, I don't know him. I read about him on Authors Guild who sold one of his kidneys to to
Wow.
produce to get his book, and it's doing very well. And he also did something from a philanthropic point of view. I mean, that sounds
Sure.
shocking, and I love to be shocking, but from a he
Yeah,
saved another person's life as well,
absolutely.
and he
Yeah.
got a bestseller. So,
Wow. What a great story.
well, it might vary. I mean, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, what have I got to spare? But maybe that's how book two gets birthed. I don't know. I might be too old.
David, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. As I mentioned, this is the second time. So, folks, go back and listen to part one when we talked to David, because he really explained the whole process and he really went into a lot of detail about the book itself. Today, we're really talking about his experience over the last year. So, again, David, welcome to the American Real family. You're a big part of who we are, a big part of our success relies on folks like you who put their trust in us, and then we partner together to make wonderful books come to life. So please get David's book, Liar Alleged. It's on Amazon and other bookstores. You could get it today. And David, thank you again.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be part of your family, and please wish all of your team my very best because they've all helped me over the last year. I wouldn't have been able to be where I am now if it hadn't been for you guys. So I'm really appreciative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to American Real. For more stories like this one, be sure to stop by AmericanReal.tv. Follow us on all social media to stay up to date with everything American Real. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and contact one of our publishing experts if you're ready to publish your book and become a best-selling author.